Hi, welcome to Talking Tech with Legal IT Insider. I'm your host, Caroline Hill, and today we're going to be talking in our webinar about modernising your case management system and what every firm needs to know in 2026. So as everyone on this webinar will be all too familiar with, case management systems sit at the heart of how law firms work and drive margin and increasingly prepare for AI and an AI-enabled future. But for many, slow performance, complex setups, aging infrastructure are holding everything back. It's one of the real pain points for many of the people that I speak to, and certainly an area that they don't love diving into in terms of, the changes that it sometimes involved. Today, I'm here to talk with Lima's head of product, Ollie Potts, as he shares with us what he sees happening inside of law firms. And he says that CMS optimisation has become a priority, looking at how organisations can improve performance without switching suppliers or undergoing painful migrations. Hi, Ollie.
Hi, everyone. Really good to be here. Thanks, Caroline.
Nice to see you. So you've been, so I'm going to let you do a proper introduction, but you've been with Lima, which is a strategic IT consultancy for 5 years, I think, pretty much bang on. And I know Lima was established in '97. They're a strategic partner to law firms. You help law firms get the most out of their case management systems. And today we're going to do a deep dive into some of the problems. So I really hope for people listening in that you will jump in with your questions. I know Ollie's happy for that to be interactive, and we very much look forward to hearing from you. Just to give you a bit of a sort of what's coming up type thing. Obviously, we're going to find out a little bit more about Ollie and Lima. We're going to talk about the case management landscape and perhaps a bit of the broader tech landscape, because Ollie deals with a lot of law firms, so it's always useful to have that sort of perspective, I think. We'll be talking about the challenges that law firms are facing. It'd be great if you could jump in on that, because everybody's different. We're going to be looking at perhaps what the path of least resistance is, or might look like. And we're going to be talking through Lima's 4-prong assessment, which I think many of you will find really helpful to talk through that. We'll be looking at Microsoft and how they're working with Microsoft, and we'll be looking at some practical use cases as well, which I always think is really helpful, rather than just talking in theory. And then we'll perhaps give you some final takeaways. But Ollie, talk to me a bit about you. People may not be familiar with you and Lima and the work you do. So before we dive into the weeds, give us a bit more of an introduction.
Real. Hi, everyone. So I'm Ollie. Caroline, you're absolutely spot on. I've been at Lima for just shy of 5 years. It's probably an anniversary gift from Lima to be on this webinar. But yeah, I've been in the tech industry as a whole just over 15 years. I've exclusively worked at service providers, so offering services to firms is something that comes second nature. And I've been at Lima. I've done a couple of different roles here, but I'm currently head of product, so I'm responsible for everything that we sell, and I also look after our pre-sales team as well. So Lima's an interesting business. We started in the late 90s, started by 2 co-founders. Organic growth over the last 25, 27 years, and that's seen us serve enterprise, mid-market and SMB spaces over that time. Primarily, we've been working with law firms for the last 10 years or so, and the difference that we try and make is everything that we do, whilst we're a technology business and we're focused on people that provide services, but what our main differentiator is, we always look for the value or the outcome that we're driving during every conversation or every proposal or proposition for a service. Our capabilities are across multiple disciplines. So we look at everything with modern work and Microsoft. We can also do infrastructure with companies like Dell and Cisco. We can do networking. So our ability to have that full 360 conversation about a firm's technical trajectory and their plan for IT is what we'd like to call the full wrap. So we look at everything. We don't have a particular niche, but like I say, everything that we do needs to drive a value or an outcome piece. And that will be really pivotal to some of the conversation that we've got today around why case management is so important. What are the what is the value of a CMS to the firm, and how can we drive efficiency through both technical and user productivity. That will be a pivotal part of today's conversation.
Yeah, and actually, interestingly, so perhaps I didn't touch on, but I think we'll have time to squeeze in culturally, CMS, its significance culturally to firms is changing in my experience. So in terms of being able to really collect a lot of that metadata, and in order to really understand the types of work, even at a higher level than we've sort of considered CMS to be relevant to before. Perhaps we'll have time to touch a little bit on that. I hope. Talk me through, like you deal with a lot of firms, and this is a very broad question, almost to be meaningless, but fairly briefly, talk to me about the case management landscape as far as you see today, in the context of the broader tech landscape, and perhaps the good and the bad.
Yeah, okay. I think the way to summarize this is firms are at an inflection point, more so this year, but I think it's been present for the last couple of years or so. When I speak to firms, they're asking the question, do we stick with our current CMS, a CMS that maybe has 10, 20 years of data in there? Do we move to a SaaS-based system? Do we even carve out processes into a different system altogether that's not maybe geared towards case management, something like a general Microsoft platform, for example? Do we integrate our processes into those technologies? Do we need a CMS? Those are the conversations that are sparking this year. And the inflection point is, well, how are you going to shift that data? What are you going to retain? Loads of compliance questions come off the back of that around case law. And the good for us looks like, well, you have a CMS that's implemented, well, it's embedded into process. Let's have a discussion around why that question is actually occurring. Rather than answering that question outright, why are you thinking of changing CMS? Why are you thinking that the CMS is no longer right for you? Sometimes that conversation leads into poor performance, or leads into, we've just bought other firms and we need to amalgamate and they all use different CMSs. What do we do there? I've also spoken to firms who have made this decision in the past. They've used one system between 1990 and 2000, let's use round numbers. They then changed and they now use a different one. So they have to maintain two systems at once, potentially more. There are other situations where if you're a multi-service firm, different departments or different practices might use different CMSs because some are geared towards residential conveyancing, or some are geared towards corporate law. So those are the things that start to spark that question. The bad looks like system sprawl. You've got multiple systems that you need to manage, and that is the headache. So all of this at the moment is culminating the question of, where do we go next? That's ultimately the question, Caroline, and I'm hoping that question resonates with all of you in the room today.
Yeah, I think it does from my conversation, and particularly the system sprawl from firms that have grown. And we're going to come on to talk about perhaps about remote working, but there seems to be one of the issues, that the challenges that firms are facing is still potentially that ability to enable everyone to work remotely, particularly in a secure way.
Absolutely. And the challenge that most CMSs have is they were designed, they were written when staff and users were in the office. They were completely next door, proverbially to the data and to the underlying system. Facilitating remote working, even short distance, was not a primary driver back then. And I think a lot of firms have had to find a way around this by offering virtual desktop solutions, or consuming those sorts of solutions to place the desktop next to the data. And that is also coming into the question around, well, if we went to a SaaS-based CMS, it wouldn't have that concern. It's designed for web-based access. It's designed for remote access primarily. So that does also come into it. There is also the question around, rather than just a focus on CMS, generally, is our system as a whole accessible remotely? Can people even log into their devices when they are working remotely? Do they have access to mobiles? Do we offer corporate devices? A lot of questions start to come out from that one angle that you look at. You blend in security. Security is the primary concern for all of us on this call at the moment. We all hold personal information of some description. We've got case information, highly desirable information to people that want to either attack our systems or compromise our systems. We all hold valuable data. So more often than not, security also blends into that.
Yeah, yeah, particularly where they've got so they've got the feedback that I've seen you talking about, or Lima talking about, and I hear a lot is around that multiple systems. There's that the issue around security, but then there's also the issue that people are facing around not sharing data, and then we're going to come on to talk about automation. So the lack of ability to achieve automation, which obviously is a huge priority for everyone at the moment.
That's it. When the data is trapped inside one system, you're limited to the capabilities of that one system. And it's all around how do you unlock that data? More value can be extracted from that data than just the specific case that you're working on or the specific matter. And even down to how quickly can our staff get access to that data in the moment whilst handling that case or that matter. How can they get access to that data? And we're talking seconds and minutes improvements here across every case, where actually that drives a real bottom line impact across 100, 500, 1,000 workers. You're talking about massive gains there. And it goes back to the sort of start of the conversation around how do we become a modern firm?
Are you seeing, I want to come on to some solutions, but are you seeing a difference between firm sizes? I would assume probably, but perhaps I'm wrong, that the bigger the firm, the more they're investing. Perhaps the less this is problematic, but I know that that's a huge generalization. And I talk to a lot of big firms, and actually they're probably the ones that have got the amalgamation issues from acquisition. So have you seen, like, what impact is the size of the firm having in terms of the challenges that we've just talked about?
Yeah, really, really good question. And for us, I'm seeing this challenge prevalent in the 50 to 750 seat firm space. And I've spoken to a few firms who sit above that to 1,000 plus, and bordering on sort of silver circle territory as well. The challenges that they face are of a completely different realm, but it still comes back to maintaining security around CMS. They're a bit further on in terms of the decisions that they've made, and you're right to call out they've got to that size primarily because they have either seen extreme growth and they've had to deal with those problems in the moment, or they've already acquired and they've already made IT decisions around amalgamation or keeping them separate. So size of the firm does have an impact. Generally speaking, every firm operates from a CMS, and every firm can make some improvements of some description. But where we're seeing the largest scale impact is in that particular space and that particular territory.
Yeah, okay. So I know, so you say that the path of least resistance is for IT to work on optimization. So I suppose I'd like to know, before we dive into your assessment and your blueprint, I'd like to know what you mean at a high level in terms of the path of least resistance is optimization, and also within that perhaps is that something of a sort of short-term fix, or you're saying that this is a long-term fix rather than people like ripping off the plaster? You think this is a long-term solution?
I think where we're at now is firms are having to go through a lot of modernization and change. That's not new. It's not a new problem. That's been prevalent for the last couple of years and beyond. But there is more technology now that we can access that everyone wants to get hold of as quickly as possible. And I see the IT department, their role is also changing away from supporting end users and making sure systems are online. Their responsibilities are going to become, if they haven't already, the change drivers for technology. They'll be the people that implement that technology, drive adoption inside the firm, and make sure it delivers a tangible outcome. And what I'm seeing is that is lagging because the responsibility of servicing users and battling either recurring problems every day, you know, the 9 a.m. surge of people phoning in with problems, or the ongoing, more persistent problems. And we're here talking about CMS. Let's talk about CMS performance, and the more data we put into it, the slower it becomes. All of those theories is holding us back. It's holding back an IT team from becoming that transformational change driver. And my view is that if we can solve the problem around the current CMS today, around performance, around end user experience, and making sure that they have a great experience of any IT they consume, it frees up so much time to then consider, right, what do we do? What does the long term look like for the firm? What initiatives do we want to drive over the next 3, 5, 10 years inside the firm? Frees up so much time to think about that and not being weighed down by the recurring issues. So with that, you kind of mentioned two key areas there where we have developed something that is so far pretty unique in the market, where we have the capability to assess current performance levels of the CMS. Now, it has to be an on-premise or a self-deployed CMS here. This doesn't apply to SaaS-based systems in the same realm, but we have the ability to assess performance both technically and also gauge end user experience across the firm. So by speaking to end users directly, engaging their perception of IT and systems, we then merge those two views together, and the assessment output is a trajectory to improving end user experience and improving performance of CMSs. And I see there is a massive link. There is a strong link here between how happy our staff are and our users are, when technology is working for them, when it is helping them to be efficient in handling, you know, they might have 6, 7, 10 matters open at once, for example. Are our systems able to cope with that? We gauge low-level information like that and put together a roadmap. And from that, we also will commit to percentage improvement levels. We can then translate that into, if all of those actions are implemented, what is the bottom line impact? What efficiency saving are you going to make? Not just from how free will the IT team then to deal with strategy, transformation, and impact, but how much more efficiency can we drive through either billable hours, or if you're doing fixed fee work, how can we make that more efficient and streamlined? What is the impact going to be there? And if you're talking about returning anything from 20 minutes plus back to each member of our team, each member of staff every single day, the impact is in the hundreds of thousands and the millions of pounds worth of efficiency savings, which can be repurposed, or it can give our staff a greater well-being as well. There is the well-being aspect of being in this profession. We know that the profession is quite demanding, so we need to make technology work for them. And coming on to how do we do that, from the assessment, that is effectively a springboard of what we can do, to your point around what are the immediate actions that we can put in place. And it's not a sticking plaster. These are actions that will stand the test of time. They are permanent, and you will gain benefit from it. But what does the wider piece look like for the IT team's transformation? That's the blueprint from us. So we've put together a technology journey that lasts about 3 to 5 years to implement, that sees us unhinge ourselves from these common virtual desktop environments, which, you know, for the techies on the call, it's either Citrix environments or remote desktop environments or Azure virtual desktop environments. How do we unhinge our workers from that virtual desktop, release the power of the device they're working from, give them access to things like Teams right off the bat, one single login, they've got a great experience, everything is there for them. All we do is we leave case management in a purpose-built platform that they can access side by side with everything else from their device. A completely new way of working for most firms, and a completely modern architecture. It sees us implement the best of Microsoft 365 and the security that has to offer, and it sees us deliver great permanent end user experience changes that we can actively monitor as well.
So you created, yeah, that's interesting. So So you're creating, in effect, a hybrid model. So you've got your CMS on-prem, and then you're building all of creating, you've got the 365 all around it. So presumably you're going to be using, and this is what you call Lima 365, right? Is that right? Or
Yeah, exactly. So
yeah,
there's that view. It effectively means that you can choose wherever you want to put your CMS.
right.
Normally, IT systems are all served from a singular platform
Yeah,
that is driven by the needs of a CMS. What is the fundamental technical requirements for CMS? And we'll bolt everything else around it. We'll put all of that in the same platform. This allows you to decouple this. A purpose-built platform for your CMSs. And for Lima, we have two options. We do have the on-premise option, but most customers are starting to move away from that because of not just security, but ongoing costs to implement. We have two options: Microsoft Azure, which is a general purpose cloud, or Lima has their own hybrid cloud, which is purpose built for performance. So other providers will have the same. The the blueprint allows you to decouple all of the other systems away from that, giving you the perfect opportunity to make a choice on where your CMS sits based on data sovereignty, local compliance laws, and performance, more importantly. And then you can use the best of everything else that you pay for. So the best of Microsoft 365, which you pay for every single month, and from even outside the legal industry, there is always more you can get out of that platform. There are always features that companies and firms are not using that we can use to drive that investment. It's a sizable investment for most firms, and we need to make the most of it.
yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Um, give me practical, like, so for the people listening in on the call, I know we said we'd share some practical use cases that you're dealing with. So talk me through practical examples of problems that you've solved that might
Yeah,
sort of bring some of this to life, if you don't mind.
yeah, perfect. So Northern law firm that we were working with over the last 2 years, they had a completely on-premise infrastructure. They had desires to move to cloud, didn't know where to start. Did they just bite the bullet and go cloud-based CMS? And do they have a long-running project to move data? Or do they utilize our experience with the assessment and the blueprint to relocate CMS to a hybrid cloud, buy the IT team some breathing space to think about long-term strategy, make use of Microsoft 365, move away from their on-premise phone system as well into things like Teams. There was a strong driver from the staff and a strong desire to use Teams, and it wasn't prevalent in the firm at that point. So we've worked with them over a 2-year period to implement that part of the blueprint, and they're seeing great success from that. They're actually seeing a reduction in what we call priority one incidents. So where there is a technical incident that stops the firm operating until that issue is resolved, and that issue is caused by an underlying technical fault, there is a massive reduction. They were having 2, 3 priority one incidents a month with an on-premise infrastructure. And by implementing, our support services, our cloud platform, our blueprint, have reduced that to that number a year, not a month. And those issues are effectively deep-rooted at that point. They are not caused by end users mistakenly plugging a device in to the network, for example. So there's a tangible outcome there that drives bottom line efficiency. That's primary, but also the users now trust IT. They know that IT is reliable. They can work from anywhere. By moving to a hybrid cloud, naturally, it doesn't matter where you work from. You can work from your own premise. You can work from your own home. So they gained a benefit of remote working as well, which they couldn't facilitate. So that's a really big transformation, and that's a really big impact for the blueprint. Where we're looking at assessment services, the assessment specifically has, we've worked with firms that operate Proclaim, SOS, visual files, all of these systems, and there is always more to be had out of them in terms of their performance. So with the assessment, we actually uncovered that when we speak to end users, they're actually adjusting their working pattern because they know that technology is more reliable at certain times of the day. For example, they know that if they're first to log in, they'll get a better level of performance. So they're opting to log in 1 or 2 hours early finishing 1 or 2 hours earlier in the day because they know that the system is more reliable. Excuse me, the light's just gone off. We're live. That's the problem of this.
Carry on.
So real world impact there for users and their ability to use systems. Also, we've measured performance returned in terms of returned hours. So with a firm that we worked with in Scotland to drive this assessment, we found that the returnable hours, if they were to action all the items from the assessment, was over £1 million a year. So it's a significant improvement to the bottom line. So tangible outcomes then for us, just on this point alone, is huge.
What was it going? That's an interesting metric. So was it cumulative in terms of them achieving that number of increased billable hours? Were you able to say, can we say specifically what they were able to do to increase their billable hours, or was it just a cumulative across the board?
No, so when we say cumulative across the board, they needed to have implemented all technical recommendations to get to that number. So obviously, if not all technical actions were undertaken, some of that number would not have been achieved. So I think that's what you mean by cumulative, which all encompassing. But if they'd have just chosen to do part of it, the impact is also still measurable. There are certain facts and stats that we also will underwrite based on our previous experience with those particular systems and knowledge of those systems specifically. A lot of them depend on uncommon data platforms. So not everything is based on your traditional SQL databases for the techies in the room. They're based on progress systems. So it's knowledge of those systems underneath and how to get the most out of them. Not just in this isn't just offering software related tweaks. This is around actual implementation design as well. So this goes beyond that.
How do you forecast? Because I've seen that you predict performance improvements and you provide metrics. You're quite sort of bold about doing that.
Yeah.
Is that from experience and because you do that detailed upfront assessment? I know you sort of, you're quite bold about saying, we'll be held to account to these numbers, which I think it's great. But how can you be so confident?
It's prior experience. So this is based on outcomes that we have already delivered, that we have complete knowledge over, and the stats that we're putting out are not just generic. So it's not just people have achieved this level of metric if they have actioned all these recommendations. It's based on what we've uncovered from learning from your staff and from your systems through a technical deep dive and actual data collection, so data analysis. We know that we can reduce or improve performance in certain areas by a quantifiable metric. Yeah. Sometimes it's been more. Sometimes it's been more than what we've claimed. But the being held to account piece is all around, if it doesn't deliver what we expect, we'll revisit, we'll reanalyze, and we'll figure out why.
Yeah, I really like the sort of investigative side that you do, and I like the fact that you focus on the people side of it as well. I feel like this year we're focusing, obviously this is a conversation about the tech, but obviously the reason we're doing it, the reason we do any of this is to enable people to operate well. It's not always the case, but like in this case, we want the people to be operating as efficiently as possible. Like this is still very much people business, and I quite like the fact that you talk about job satisfaction, because this is obviously an area where it can be extremely difficult. You talked about people starting early, and you talk about looking at user behavior. And so you're seeing you're seeing in terms of how CMS can impact the culture for job satisfaction. Give me an example of, is it just simply that it makes it more seamless, less frustrating, perhaps meets the demands in terms of providing more modern tech, that sort of thing?
Yeah, let's talk openly. Okay, so there is a new generation of people coming into the workforce now in firms. These are people that have grown up with technology around them. They've grown up with iPhones and iPads. They have learned how to use ChatGPT in college. for example. They are now entering the workforce on apprenticeships or other mechanisms, and they have a different expectation from technology. If they click a button, they expect it to do something when you've clicked it. Whereas I feel that people that have been in the industry for a while have this expectation that CMSs are just maybe non-performant, or it takes a while for them to do what you've asked it to do.
Yeah.
So there is that level of expectation there. And when we're talking about job satisfaction, technology plays a huge part. I've heard of people changing where they work because their systems are better. They are, yeah, exactly. And we have, as an IT team, as a collective, we need to make sure that we offer the best systems, that we offer a great experience where they can work from anywhere, especially courts, and have access to all the information that they need at that moment where it's reliable. In terms of measurables for that, through the user-based assessment, the user part of the assessment, every assessment is the same. It's always technical and user-based, and we pair the two bits of data together. There are people that we've spoken to that are genuinely frustrated with systems and their performance and their reliability, and hearing that if a couple of changes are made, that actually we can make a massive improvement to their daily life, that then translates into how happy our customers are.
Yeah.
If our customers are speaking to staff who feel that they are trained on the systems that they use, that they are simple to use, and that they are reliable, our customers are going to be happier as well.
I want to ask you about culture real quick, because I'm seeing some really interesting shifts around that. But so Cordy's put a question around Lima 365. Can Lima 365 support rapid onboarding, tenant consolidation, secure integration of newly acquired firms?
Yeah, and we've got proven track record in this as well. So where acquisitions take place, we've got a track record where we can integrate companies into an existing IT structure. We've done this not just in law, but in other industries as well, where actually we can offer certain SLAs as well. So if we know an acquisition is going to take place, we can from day one begin consolidation and make sure that users get the right experience when they work for the consolidated firm at that point. There is actually a case study on the website about this. It's not in legal, but it's in ecology. And it is exactly that point there. It's making sure that when you acquire a firm, you can integrate their systems and processes and their technology at the same time.
Yeah, brilliant. So coming on to culture, thanks for that. So case management for the longest time has been seen to be very much, routine, highly process driven work, perhaps lower level, prevalent in insurance firms in terms of where margins are really squeezed. I've been seeing this firms sort of waking up to the concept that actually case management doesn't just apply. Ideally, it it could apply much further up the chain, if that's not a disrespectful way of putting it, in order to be able to collect metadata, and in order to be able to start really beginning to automate, and because we need to be thinking about margins across all types of work, not just the most high volume of it. Are you seeing changes around that in terms of, and is this coming into your world, and is this something that you're helping with, or not really?
It really is. I want to preface this conversation with I have no desire to there is a connotation on automation around the potential for people's jobs. I think the conversation here is actually we've got into a world where those people are doing things that actually a system can do for them, and they can trust that system to do it, and they can then do other things that will drive better value. I think we are asking people to do things that in some ways drive massive value, in others drive no value at all. It's that piece where a system can help us through anything. Robotic process automation is the buzzword of the year at the moment, and that is where there are trained systems that do a specific job, do it all the time from a certain trigger point, and they then do a completing action. An example would be if you've just finished a meeting with a client, and that meeting had a note taker present, summarize the notes, inject it into a document that has our letterhead on it, and send it out. That is something that people really don't need to do if there is trust in the process, and we've built the process in the form of a robot, in a good way that we can trust. That is something that we can then ask a system to do on our behalf, and it's those small steps that start to make massive improvement. Lima's doing this internally as well. We're looking at ways in which we can use mechanics and operations like that to drive better processes. So we have a process around monitoring customer health that was very manual. It was based on human sentiment. So it was based on people interacting with customers. And actually what we can do is, where there are now note takers present, we can actually gauge the language that's used in those conversations and digitally record the sentiment of the language used, which then feeds into a real-time mechanism for monitoring customer health. So that's something that we no longer need to do on a manual basis. And it's actually driven a better outcome. We get the data in a more real-time way. So there is ample opportunity inside firms to go and do this. And there are some great examples, even client onboarding for firms. That's the same process every single time. Do we need a fee earner to go and do that work? Can a system do it end to end? I think most firms have got to a place where data gathering is automated, but input into the CMS is still manual. There are ways to now bridge that gap. RPA is not just around linking systems together with mutual languages or what we call APIs, but there are now ways for RPA to click buttons on the behalf of our users with systems like they would interact with a graphical interface normally. A system can do that now. So there are loads of more technology drivers, and this goes back to the point, Caroline, around we need to free the IT team up to look at these opportunities where we can actually drive some real value.
And increasingly, clients are going to be expecting, in terms of price is already, under pressure, but increasingly clients are starting to ask questions and demand it.
I've actually seen that rates have gone up. So cost of living's gone up. That's transpired into rates being gone up. I think most firms in the top 100 in the UK have put rates up by a percentage that exceeds inflation. Now, loads of reasons for that. Market demand. Will the market pay it? Can we justify it with increased costs? Loads of reasons for this. But can that continue? I'm not sure it can. I'm not sure an above inflation increase in costs year on year can be sustained. We now need to look at how we drive efficiency.
Yeah. Quick, sorry, this is another Lima question, but actually it could apply to anything really. I presume that what you're offering can flex depending on a firm's internal IT capabilities. The question was, does Lima 365 flex depending on a firm's internal IT capabilities? Is that presumably the case?
Yeah. So a couple of different ways of answering this, right? So if we're looking at actual engineering capability, we have the ability to bridge that gap. So where there are skills needed that don't exist in-house, we offer those skills out to firms in the form of services or engineering time or project delivery time. If we're looking at technical capability, as in physical platform and assurance as well, yeah, absolutely, we have the ability to run platforms as well, if that's where the question was going.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, okay, fine. So let's sort of move into some final sort of takeaways. It's a market in flux, so I've never seen IT teams more under pressure, and I think that we haven't really talked about AI. Actually, perhaps we should wrap up. Perhaps in our final takeaways we should do your face just as a quick minor final takeaway. Because that's the other question really. Does this help us? The reason why people are under so much pressure, one of the reasons, there's lots. So cloud is still a huge factor, isn't it? Moving to the cloud, should we, shouldn't we? Where do we do it? But and this is part of the conversation that you and I have just had. But AI is on everybody's desk, and I suppose, does this all help you? If you're thinking about, how am I leveraging AI? What does my overall strategy look like? And you're under pressure you've already talked about increased automation. I think there's a tendency to talk more about AI than automation, but actually what we should be thinking at the end of the day about efficiency, creating efficiencies. That should be the end goal, shouldn't it? So solving problems. But obviously AI is a big part of that, and it's going to be an increasing part. So perhaps part of our final takeaway, because we haven't really talked about leveraging AI, could be around that. Are you helping firms to leverage AI? Are you seeing good examples of it helping? Perhaps is there any kind of takeaway in terms of anyone that's done anything pretty cool that you could share?
Yeah, some great examples. So the AI piece, our users are driving this. Our staff are driving the use of AI. They are using it whether we want them to or not. It's just happening. We have to adapt to that. We have to secure their use of AI and make sure they don't disclose personal information to a widely used public platform. That is our responsibility. We also need to bring AI into the firm. So you've got everything from co-counsel to co-pilot, and we need to make sure that staff have got access to that and that it can access the data in a secure and safe way. If your CMS is not performant, not reliable, there is no chance AI will be able to layer over the top of it. It will add more load, it will create more problems. So there is a couple of things to take away from this, which is reliability performance. The performance is stage one. Data cleansing and hygiene is stage two. And then layering over the top AI is stage three. And like a set of house of cards, you don't do the first or the second, the third will fail. The third will fail from a technology perspective. We've then got an obligation to manage change in the firm. There's no point having these tools and paying for them if people can't use them effectively. So change management within a firm, specifically around the use of AI and integrating it into process, will make sure that an AI project succeeds. And we have the ability to work on both sides of the coin here. The implementation of AI technically and the delivery of change management. I've seen, for every firm I've worked with, 3 or 4 AI projects have failed. So the number of AI projects massively outweighs the number of firms that I've worked with. But there's a majority failure. And I see a personal driver of mine is that these projects should succeed, because actually the intention is pretty good. It's driving efficiency at the bottom line, driving good experience for users, giving them access to the tools that they want to see. So we have to make sure this succeeds. And I'm open to a conversation on this again in the future, I think, around timing. But this is a great topic to talk about.
Yeah, it's a huge topic. You know what? We've got a question. I would normally say maybe we're at time, but I think we've got time. Perhaps when working with a firm with an on-prem CMS, what sort of drivers would lead to Lima recommending a SaaS solution as a replacement? We can either do that now, we can do that in the chat.
Yeah, let's cover some of that now, because that's a really interesting question.
Yeah.
The drivers for moving completely to SaaS, as in, I think we're talking ditch the on-prem CMS, skip the hybrid option, would be mostly around process. So if there is inefficiencies in process that the optimization of a system can't combat, Lima could return so many hundreds of percents in terms of performance gain. If that's not enough, move to SaaS. You're also looking at integrations with other platforms. On-prem CMSs don't typically have great integrations, but I'm aware that some providers this year are bringing out new versions of on-prem software that will have better integrations. So those are a couple of ideas on why the discussion of a SaaS-based CMS would work. Actually, I'm hearing the opposite inside firms. So when I speak to IT and partners of firms, they've evaluated SaaS-based systems, but they're not ready yet for their particular firm, be it because they can't inject a process or merge a system together or input all the data. Some SaaS systems have a particular user cutoff point. I'm talking 500 users, 1,000, 10,000 users. They can't deal with that sort of that sort of load. So those are the challenges right now. Am I saying SaaS isn't right? Absolutely not. No, we need to have that conversation. It's particular to each firm, and SaaS will improve. But right now, you're at an inflection point of improve what you've got, and then buy yourself the time to consider what is the right approach going forward.
All right, brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you for the question. Thanks everyone for joining us. And Ollie, that's been really insightful. Appreciate you taking the time. This is an area, as I think I said at the beginning, that it's a huge pain point for people. So I hope to people listening in, that's been of some help. And I appreciate you all making the time today. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone.